Ethan Carter stood in the grand hall of the Zyrexian palace, feeling the weight of 100 alien eyes on him. The towering pillars, glowing with an eerie blue light, stretched high into the darkness above. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, and the hum of alien whispers filled the room. At the far end of the hall, seated on a raised throne of shimmering crystal, was Queen Silara, ruler of the Zyrexian Empire. Her piercing violet eyes studied Ethan like a predator watching its prey. She was unlike any human leader he had ever met, tall, graceful, and wrapped in an elegant robe that seemed to shift colors under the light. Her crown, a delicate formation of silver and energy, pulsed with a soft glow. Ethan knew this meeting was unusual. The Zyrexians were powerful, secretive, and had little trust in humans. Yet, instead of hostility, there was something else in the Queen's gaze: curiosity. She finally spoke, her voice smooth but commanding. "Ethan Carter, you have traveled far to stand before me. Do you know why you are here?" Ethan kept his expression calm, though his mind was racing. He had been summoned urgently, with no explanation. The Zyrexians never acted without reason. "I was told you had an important matter to discuss, Your Majesty," he replied. The Queen's lips curved into a small smile. "Indeed. I have a challenge for you, human. One night, one secret. If you succeed, I will uncover it for you." The words sent a ripple through the gathered Zyrexians. Ethan could feel the tension rise in the room. He kept his posture steady, though he knew better than to answer too quickly. "What kind of challenge?" he asked. Silara leaned forward slightly. "You will spend one night in the trial chamber, a place where no outsider has ever survived. If you emerge by dawn, I will reveal something that will change everything you know about humanity's place in the universe." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. A secret that could change everything. The idea was too big to ignore. But the way she spoke of the trial chamber made it clear it was no ordinary room. "And if I fail?" he asked. The Queen's expression did not change. "Then you will never leave the chamber at all." The hall fell silent. Ethan could feel the Zyrexian nobles watching him, waiting for his reaction. He thought of the risks: death, pain, the unknown. But he also thought of the possibilities. If there was even a chance that the Queen held a secret that could benefit Earth, he could not walk away. He took a deep breath. "I accept." Queen Silara nodded, as if she had expected his answer. She stood, and the hall seemed to darken as she raised one hand. The great doors at the side of the chamber slowly opened, revealing a tunnel that led down into the unknown. "Then step forward, human, and may your will be stronger than the darkness that awaits." Ethan glanced once at the crowd of aliens before turning toward the tunnel. The moment he crossed the threshold, the doors slammed shut behind him. The challenge had begun. The sound of the heavy doors slamming shut echoed through the stone walls, leaving Ethan Carter in complete silence. The dim blue light from the palace had vanished, and now he stood in a long, dark corridor. The air was damp and strangely cold. Ethan took a slow breath, steadying his nerves. Trial chamber, a place where no outsider had ever survived. The words of Queen Silara repeated in his mind. If this was a test, he needed to stay sharp. His instincts told him that danger could come from anywhere. He stepped forward, his boots making a soft tapping sound against the smooth floor. Suddenly, the walls around him shifted, like giant pieces of a puzzle moving on their own. He stopped immediately. The corridor he had entered was no longer straight. Instead, a maze had formed before his eyes. Ethan exhaled. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy. He had read about Zyrexian technology before, how their structures could change shape. But seeing it in action was something else. This wasn't just a test of endurance. It was a test of intelligence and adaptability. Taking another step forward, he ran his hand along the wall. It was warm, humming softly like it was alive. A few more steps, and suddenly, CLANK. The ground beneath him shifted, tilting violently to one side. Ethan barely had time to react before he started sliding down a steep metal slope. He twisted his body, trying to slow himself down, but the surface was too smooth. Faster, faster, until VM. He landed hard on a stone platform, rolling to absorb the impact. He groaned, feeling the soreness in his back, but at least he was still in one piece. He looked around. He was no longer in a narrow corridor, but in a massive chamber, its ceiling so high he could barely see it. The walls were lined with strange, glowing symbols, pulsating like a heartbeat. The air was thick with an electric charge. Then he heard it, a low, mechanical growl. Ethan turned quickly. From the shadows, a creature stepped forward. At first glance, it looked like an animal, a four-legged beast with metallic skin and sharp claws. But its eyes, they glowed with intelligence. This was no ordinary beast. It was a machine, built for one purpose: to hunt. Ethan slowly reached for his belt, where he carried a small survival knife. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. The creature lunged. Ethan dropped to the ground just in time, rolling away as the machine's claws slashed through the air where he had been standing. Sparks flew as its metal feet scraped against the stone floor. Think, Ethan, think. He told himself. He couldn't fight this thing head-on. He needed another way. His eyes darted to the walls. Those glowing symbols. They had to mean something. If this place was a test, then maybe. The creature charged again. This time, Ethan ran toward the wall. At the last second, he jumped, kicking off the wall to change direction. The beast's momentum carried it forward, crashing into the wall with a loud boom. The impact caused the symbols to flicker. That's it. Ethan ran his hand over the glowing symbols, searching for a pattern. His fingers brushed against a symbol that felt different, colder. He pressed it. The ground rumbled. Suddenly, a pillar of energy shot up from the floor, slamming into the beast and sending it flying backward. Sparks erupted from its body as it twitched violently, its glowing eyes flickering before finally dimming. Ethan stepped back, panting. The beast was disabled. He looked at the wall again, now understanding. The trial chamber wasn't just about brute strength. It was about using intelligence to survive. But before he could relax, he heard something else, a sound that didn't belong to the machine. A soft, pained groan. Ethan turned toward the far side of the chamber. In the shadows, he saw a figure slumped against the wall. A Zyrexian. Her silver armor was cracked, and her deep blue skin was covered in bruises. She looked up at Ethan with weak but determined eyes. You're not one of them," she muttered. Ethan crouched beside her, carefully studying her injuries. She had a deep cut on her side, but it wasn't fatal. "Who are you?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "Soraya, former royal guard, left to die in this cursed place." Ethan's mind raced. A Zyrexian warrior, trapped here. That meant something was wrong. Before he could ask more, Soraya gritted her teeth and whispered, "Listen to me, human. This chamber, it's not just a test. It's a prison." Ethan's breath caught. A prison? Before he could respond, the walls of the chamber shook again, and a deep voice echoed from above. "The first trial is complete, but your journey has just begun." Ethan exchanged a look with Soraya. Whatever this place was, it was more dangerous than he had imagined. And now he wasn't alone in it. Ethan's pulse was still racing as he looked at Soraya, the injured Zyrexian warrior. Her deep blue skin was bruised, her silver armor cracked, and yet, despite her injuries, her sharp eyes remained focused. "A prison?" Ethan repeated her words. "What do you mean?" Soraya winced as she tried to sit up. "The trial chamber, it's not just a test. It's a place where the queen sends those she wants to get rid of. Warriors who have failed her, enemies who know too much. And now, you." Ethan frowned. "Then why would she send me here if she wants something from me?" Soraya gave a dry laugh. Maybe she wants you to die trying. Ethan let out a slow breath. He didn't know what Queen Silara was planning, but he wasn't going to die here. He crouched beside Soraya and examined her wound. It was a deep cut along her side, but not life-threatening if treated quickly. "Can you walk?" he asked. She gritted her teeth and nodded. "I'll manage." Ethan carefully pulled her up, and she leaned on him for support. They didn't have time to rest. The walls around them were already shifting again, the glowing symbols flickering like a heartbeat. The trial was far from over. A deep rumbling sound filled the chamber. The ground beneath them split apart, revealing a long pathway leading into darkness. At the end of it, a single stone door stood, carved with strange Zyrexian symbols. Ethan had no doubt. It was the only way forward. Soraya's grip tightened on Ethan's arm. "Something is coming." Ethan turned. From the shifting walls, tall, shadowy figures emerged. They looked humanoid, but their bodies were covered in sleek black armor, their eyes glowing that deep red. Zyrexian executioners. Soraya stiffened. "They are the Queen's enforcers. If they are here, we are already considered dead." Ethan clenched his fists. "Not today." One of the executioners stepped forward. "Outsider, surrender now, and your suffering will be minimal." Ethan smirked. "Yeah, I'll take my chances." The executioner didn't hesitate. In an instant, the figure charged, moving at an unnatural speed. Ethan barely had time to react. He shoved Soraya aside just as a blade sliced through the air where she had been. Ethan rolled to the ground and sprang to his feet. "Run to the door. I'll hold them off." Soraya hesitated, then nodded and began moving toward the door, her steps unsteady but determined. The executioners closed in, and Ethan grabbed the only weapon he had, his small survival knife. Not ideal against armored killers, but he had faced worse odds before. One of the executioners swung a blade at his head. Ethan ducked, feeling the cold metal slice through the air above him. He twisted his body and drove his knife into the armor's weak spot, just beneath the ribs. The executioner staggered back, dark liquid leaking from the wound. But there was no time to celebrate. The second executioner lunged, forcing Ethan to dodge again. Soraya had reached the stone door, her hands pressing against the symbols. "Ethan, I need time to unlock this." Ethan gritted his teeth. No pressure. The first executioner recovered and attacked again, slashing at Ethan with brutal speed. This time, Ethan wasn't fast enough. The blade grazed his arm, leaving a burning pain. Ethan kicked off the wall, flipping over the executioner's head and landing behind him. Without hesitation, he grabbed the fallen enemy's weapon and spun, slicing through the second executioner's leg. The executioner fell, but another figure was already approaching. Ethan turned to Soraya. "Any time now." She cursed under her breath, her fingers moving rapidly over the symbols. Finally, there was a loud CLIKK. The stone door slid open, revealing a passage. Soraya looked at Ethan. "Move." Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted toward the door just as more executioners arrived. They were outnumbered. Soraya grabbed Ethan's arm and pulled him inside. The moment they crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind them, cutting off the executioners. Ethan fell to his knees, breathing heavily. Soraya leaned against the wall, her face pale from blood loss. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, Soraya let out a weak chuckle. Well, that was exciting. Ethan looked around. They were now in a narrow tunnel, dimly lit by glowing blue veins in the walls. The air was heavy, almost charged with energy. "Where are we?" Ethan asked. Soraya took a deep breath. "The next trial chamber, and probably the last safe place before the real nightmare begins." Ethan nodded. "Then we keep moving. We're not dying here." Soraya smirked. "Agreed." With that, they pushed forward, deeper into the unknown. Ethan and Soraya moved carefully through the dimly lit tunnel, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The blue veins in the walls pulsed faintly, casting shifting shadows that made the passage seem alive. Despite the danger behind them, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something far worse lay ahead. Soraya's breathing was uneven, her whelm slowing her down. Ethan noticed but said nothing. He knew that Zyrexian warriors had their pride, and pointing out her weakness wouldn't help. "How much further?" Ethan asked, glancing at her. Soraya ran a hand along the wall, tracing the strange symbols. "The Queen's trial chambers are designed to test not just strength, but also intelligence. If I'm right, this passage should lead to..." Before she could finish, the ground beneath them shook violently. The walls rumbled, and a deep metallic voice echoed through the tunnel. "Trial of secrets initiated. Reveal the truth or face the consequences." Ethan clenched his fists. "I really hate this place." Soraya exhaled sharply. "We need to be careful. This trial will test our knowledge, not just our survival skills." Ethan looked ahead. The tunnel opened into a vast circular chamber with towering walls lined with glowing symbols. In the center of the room stood a massive stone monolith, its surface covered in alien script. 3 smaller doors were visible, each marked with different Zyrexian glyphs. Soraya frowned. "A puzzle." Ethan sighed. "Great. I'm more of a kick-down-the-door kind of guy." Soraya ignored his comment and moved toward the monolith, scanning the symbols carefully. "This is a test of knowledge. Only the right path will open. The wrong choice will activate traps." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "And I'm guessing you don't know which door is the right one." Soraya hesitated. "Not yet. But this script, it tells a story. If we understand it, we'll know the answer." Ethan stepped beside her, studying the monolith. He couldn't read Zyrexian, but the carvings depicted a royal figure standing before a kneeling warrior, holding something out to them. In another section, the same warrior stood alone, their face hidden. Ethan pointed at the carvings. "What does this mean?" Soraya traced the symbols carefully. "It's an old Zyrexian legend. A warrior who served the queen faithfully. Until they learned a forbidden secret, they were given a choice: loyalty or exile." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What was the secret?" Soraya's lips pressed into a thin line. "No one knows. The story was erased from history. The queen ensures that knowledge is controlled." Ethan thought for a moment, then looked at the 3 doors. "One of these must represent exile, right?" Soraya nodded. "Yes. If we choose the door of loyalty, we pass. If we choose exile, we may never leave this chamber." Ethan studied the symbols on the doors. One depicted a crown, another showed a shattered blade, and the third had an image of a lone figure standing in the shadows. Soraya exhaled. The answer should be obvious, but something feels off. Ethan tapped his chin. "The queen doesn't want people who question her authority, right? If the warrior in the story was erased from history, then maybe the truth wasn't loyalty. Maybe it was the exile." Soraya's eyes widened. "You think we should choose the door of the lone figure?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah. If this whole trial is about secrets, then the real answer is the one that was erased." Soraya hesitated. "If you're wrong, we could be walking into a death trap." Ethan gave her a small smirk. "Wouldn't be my first time." Soraya sighed, then placed a hand on the 3rd door, the one with the lone figure. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the door slid open with a low hum. Ethan exhaled. "Looks like we're not dead yet." Soraya shook her head, impressed. "You saw through the trick. You may not read Zyrexian, but you understand how people think. That's a rare skill." Ethan grinned. "I just don't like being lied to." They stepped through the door and found themselves in another corridor, but this one was different. The walls were not stone, but metal, cold, polished, and humming with energy. Soraya tensed. "This is no longer part of the trials. We're in the hidden chambers of the queen herself." Ethan's smile faded. Then we need to be even more careful. As they walked forward, the air grew colder and the sound of footsteps echoed from deeper within the corridor. Someone was waiting for them, and they were getting closer. Ethan and Soraya moved cautiously down the metallic corridor, the hum of unseen energy vibrating through the walls. Unlike the ancient stone of the trials, this place felt alive, as if it was watching them. Soraya whispered, "This is the true heart of the Queen's domain. No outsider has ever stepped here and lived to speak of it." Ethan smirked. "Well, let's be the first, then." Before she could respond, a deep thudding noise echoed from ahead. Ethan instinctively pressed himself against the wall, and Soraya did the same. Footsteps. Heavy. Rhythmic. Not human. A moment later, two towering Zyrexian royal guards marched past an opening just ahead. Their armor gleamed under the cold lights, and each held a plasma spear that crackled with energy. Ethan barely breathed as they passed. Once the guards were gone, Soraya gestured for Ethan to follow. "We're close. The Queen's secret chamber should be at the end of this passage." Ethan hesitated. "You sure she won't be in there?" Soraya's expression darkened. "No, but we don't have a choice." They pressed forward, and soon the corridor opened into a massive hall. Unlike the rest of the palace, which was filled with golden Zyrexian symbols, this chamber was dark, almost completely unmarked. The only decoration was a single glowing pedestal in the center of the room. Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What is this place?" Soraya stepped forward slowly, her breath shaky. This is the Queen's greatest secret." Ethan followed her gaze to the pedestal. Upon it sat a small metallic cube, pulsing faintly with blue light. Strange human-like letters flickered across its surface, mixed with Zyrexian script. Ethan frowned. That looks like something human-made." Soraya's hands trembled as she touched the cube. "Because it is." Ethan's mind raced. "A human artifact. Here." He moved closer. "What is it?" Soraya took a deep breath. "It's proof that everything the Queen told our people is a lie." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Start explaining." Soraya hesitated, then activated the cube. A holographic display appeared above it, showing a recording of two figures. One was a Zyrexian, but the other was unmistakably human. Ethan's heart pounded as the recording played. The human, wearing an old Earth military uniform, spoke first. "The alliance between humanity and the Zyrexians was meant to bring peace. But you chose a different path." The Zyrexian figure, draped in royal robes, responded coldly. "Your kind will never understand. We do not share power. We take it." The human sighed. "Then you leave us no choice." The recording ended abruptly. Ethan stared. "The Queen betrayed a peace treaty." Soraya nodded. "She has ruled for centuries, telling my people that we were always at war with humans, that humans were the enemy. But this proves she once sought peace, and she destroyed it." Ethan exhaled. "She lied to your entire species." Soraya clenched her fists. "If my people knew the truth, they would question everything. The Queen's rule would collapse." Ethan looked at her. "And that's why this secret has been buried." Soraya nodded. "Anyone who learns this truth never leaves this place alive." Suddenly, the chamber shook violently. A deep, mechanical voice boomed from the walls. "Unauthorized access detected. Intruders identified." Ethan grabbed Soraya's arm. "We need to move. Now." But before they could react, a hidden door slid open, and a tall, regal figure stepped inside. Soraya's blood ran cold. Ethan's muscles tensed. Standing before them, draped in golden robes and with piercing violet eyes, was the Queen herself. She smiled. "I see you've uncovered my little secret." Ethan and Soraya stood frozen as the Zyrexian Queen entered the chamber, her golden robes flowing like liquid metal. Her violet eyes glowed with intelligence and danger. "You should not have come here," she said, her voice smooth but laced with warning. Ethan clenched his fists. So it's true. You betrayed the peace treaty with humanity. The Queen chuckled softly, stepping forward. Betrayal? No, human. I did what was necessary. Your kind would have done the same. Soraya's face darkened. You lied to all of us. You told our people that humans were always our enemies, that they sought to destroy us. But you were the one who destroyed the peace. The Queen sighed. My dear Soraya, you are young. You do not understand what it takes to rule. Peace is an illusion. Power is what keeps a civilization strong. Ethan stepped between them. Enough with the speeches. If power is all you care about, why hide this? He gestured to the glowing cube on the pedestal. Why not just destroy it? The Queen's expression flickered with something unreadable. Because some truths cannot be erased. They can only be controlled. Before Ethan could respond, the walls trembled and hidden doors slid open. From the shadows, a squad of royal guards marched in, their plasma spears crackling with energy. Soraya's breath caught. She was expecting us. The Queen smiled. Of course. I knew the moment you stepped into my palace, Soraya, that you would eventually come searching for answers. And I knew your human companion would encourage it. She turned her gaze to Ethan. You are bold, I'll give you that. But your journey ends here. Ethan's mind raced. Outnumbered. No weapons. No way out. But then he noticed something. The guards weren't attacking. They were waiting. The Queen wanted them to surrender. Ethan exhaled slowly. He knew from experience that when a powerful leader gave an enemy a choice, it meant she wasn't as confident as she pretended to be. She was afraid of something. And that gave him an opening. He glanced at Soraya. Trust me. She nodded without hesitation. Ethan smirked and turned back to the Queen. If you're so sure of your power, let's make a deal. The Queen's eyes narrowed. A deal. Ethan stepped closer, ignoring the guards. You don't want this secret getting out. That means you can't just kill us. You need to control the story. The Queen's gaze flickered. She was listening. Ethan continued. But here's the problem. Soraya is one of your people. If you kill her, questions will rise. People will start to wonder. You can't silence everyone. Soraya caught on quickly. And if Ethan disappears, the humans will come looking for him. Maybe even another war will start. The Queen's face remained unreadable, but her fingers tightened slightly on her robes. She was considering it. Then, after a long silence, she smiled. You are clever, human, but cleverness does not guarantee survival. She turned to Soraya. You were my most promising student, but you are blinded by emotion. You would throw away your future for a species that is not your own. Soraya stood firm. No, I am choosing the truth. The Queen's expression hardened. Then you are no longer my heir. Soraya's breath hitched. Heir. Ethan's eyes widened. That was the Queen's real fear. She wasn't just a ruler. She was a mother figure to Soraya. And now she saw her as a traitor. Ethan seized the moment. Soraya doesn't need your throne. She needs a future where your people aren't living under lies. The Queen turned away, staring at the cube. For the first time, she looked tired. The truth does not make a nation strong. Only control does. Ethan's voice was firm. Then why are you hesitating? The Queen didn't answer. Then, finally, she waved a hand. Leave. Take the cube and go. But know this, if you return, you will be my enemy. Soraya's heart pounded. She had expected a battle, not mercy. Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed the cube and pulled Soraya toward the exit. As the doors slid shut behind them, Soraya turned back for one last look. The Queen stood alone in the chamber, staring at the past she had tried so hard to bury. And for the first time, she looked uncertain. Ethan and Soraya rushed through the palace corridors, the glowing cube pulsing in Ethan's hands. Alarms blared, and the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. The Queen had let them go, but her guards had different orders. Soraya's heart pounded. We're almost there. Ethan gritted his teeth as they turned a corner, only to come face to face with a squad of Zyrexian warriors. Their spears crackled with energy, blocking the path to the docking bay. One of the guards, a tall, armored Zyrexian, stepped forward. Halt, hand over the artifact and surrender. Ethan tightened his grip on the cube. Surrender wasn't an option. If they lost this, the truth would remain buried forever. Soraya stepped beside him. You don't have to do this. The Queen lied to all of us. The guards hesitated, glancing at each other. Uncertainty flickered in their eyes. Ethan saw his chance. She feared the truth. If she was right, why would she be afraid? The lead guard hesitated. Our loyalty is to the throne. Soraya's voice was steady. Then ask yourself, does the throne serve the people, or does the people serve the throne? The guards didn't move. Ethan's mind raced. If they waited too long, reinforcements would come. They had to act now. Then, a distant explosion shook the palace. The guards turned in alarm. Soraya grabbed Ethan's hand. Now, they sprinted past the confused soldiers, pushing through the docking bay doors. Ethan's ship, the Horizon, stood ready, its engines already warming up. Their escape was within reach. But behind them, more guards appeared. Ethan ran up the ramp, tossing the cube inside. Soraya, come on. But Soraya had stopped. She turned, looking at the palace, her home, her people. She had spent her life believing in the Queen, in their leadership, in their destiny. But now she saw the truth. She couldn't run from it. Ethan reached for her hand. Soraya, we have to go. Her violet eyes met his. Then she made her choice. She stepped forward and pressed a control panel on the wall. The docking bay doors plunged shut, locking the guards inside. She turned to Ethan with a sad smile. You have to go without me. Ethan's stomach dropped. What? No, we did this together. Soraya shook her head. If I leave, nothing changes. But if I stay, I can fight from within. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He hated this, but deep down he understood. Soraya took a step closer. Take the truth to the humans. Tell them what the Queen has done. I'll make sure it spreads here. Ethan's jaw tightened. And what if she punishes you? Soraya gave a small, determined smile. Then I'll remind her that she trained me to be stronger than fear. Ethan stared at her. 1,000 things he wanted to say, but there was no time. Finally, he nodded. Soraya pressed something into his hand, a small communicator. Stay alive, Ethan. He grinned. You too, princess. With one last look, Ethan ran up the ramp. The Horizon's engines roared to life. As he lifted off, he saw Soraya standing firm, facing the guards as they broke through the doors. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She stood her ground. And as the Horizon shot into the sky, Ethan knew the war for truth had only just begun.